our specialty today is caramelized onion soup with Gruyere cheese and cauliflower. So we're going to start with caramelizing the onions, which is a lot of effort, or it takes time, but it's so worth it. Caramelized onions are like, they're almost like dessert. So we start out with a tablespoon of olive oil, a tablespoon of butter, and then we're going to take 2 cups, which is a lot, of onions. The original recipe calls for Vidalia onions. I've used sweet onions, I've used regular onions, I've used partially red onions. It doesn't really matter, it's all good. So we're going to put these in together, and then we're going to spend a lot of time at the stove, and so we're going to saute them, but we're going to start with at 15 or 20 minutes of sauteing. We're going to just come and add a teaspoon of salt and a little pepper, and we're going to saute it another 20 or 30 minutes, just stirring occasionally. And when we have that done, then we're going to make a little roux. We're going to take 2 tablespoons of gluten-free flour, and our wettener is going to be a combination of dry sherry, cooking sherry, and a little white wine, a half a cup total. So that's going to be our thickener. Then we're going to add 6 cups of chicken stock. The original recipe and the classic French onion soup recipe would be with beef, but we're not making a classic French onion soup recipe. We're not using bread. Instead, when it comes to when we would add the bread to the top of the French onion soup, we're adding cauliflower. So it's cauliflower that's cut thick as if it were slices of bread. And we're going to put that in, and we're going to boil that another 15 or 20 minutes. And then when we're ready to serve, we're going to top it with Gruyere and or Swiss cheese. So it's really good. So here we go to the stove. And we'll stir for a minute or two, and then I'll just be doing this periodically, and I'll meet you back here in about 30 minutes. Okay, so here's what our caramelized onions look like. It smells really good too. So now we're going to start making the roux, the little flour sauce. So 2 tablespoons of flour and a half cup of sherry and wine. And we have to let that cook a little bit. You know, roux is probably what you make for gravy too. So you never want a raw gravy when the flour isn't cooked. So it's really important that this step is done well. It's looking good. So here's what it looks like now. See, it has to, so the flour is kind of cooking. There you go. Oh yeah, just right. So also we added a little thyme and 1 bay leaf in here. So now that's all cooking. So now we want to put in our 6 cups of soup stock. As I said, if it were a classic French onion soup, we would be using beef stock, but it isn't classic. So I'm using chicken stock. Now this is going to boil for about 15 minutes. So we had our caramelizing, which took first 15 minutes and then another 30 minutes. And now we're adding this. I have to tell you, one night I belonged to this gourmet cooking group, and we decided we would do Julia Child's real French cooking, and I was doing the French onion soup. It took me 8 hours to make a really, really good French onion soup. And all the other people who came for dinner, we loved the food, but everybody complained about the amount of time they spent in the kitchen that day, because 8 hours was kind of average for each of the several parts of the meal. So it was delicious though. So this is a much easier version. So now, again, it's going to come to a boil for about 15 minutes, and when that's finished, we're going to add the next step, which is the cauliflower. So we're going to boil the cauliflower in it, and that's going to be, in essence, the equivalent of our bread, which would normally be at the top of an onion soup. Okay. Okay, so here's what our wonderful soup looks like. See, it's all boiling and happy. And now our last step is to take the cauliflower and pour it right into our soup. And we'll let that boil for about 10 or 12 minutes. And then we'll be ready to serve and pour. Okay, here we have our cauliflower that's boiled in with the soup. And now it's almost ready to eat. So now we just have to dish it up. Ho, ho, ho. And you see these big clumps of cauliflower look very much like a big piece of bread. And so when you're eating traditional French onion soup, there's cheese that's just melted on top of the bread, but in this case, it's melting on top of our cauliflower. We are so healthy here. And as soon as this cools off just a tad, I'm going to let you see why I like it so much. Okay, cool. All right, here we go. It's hard to go wrong with Gruyere cheese. You know, that makes everything better too. Oh yes, there's a reason why I like this. It is flavorful to the exponential, like 9th or 10th. It's really good. So I hope you enjoy it. This is one of those things, it's best to serve fresh. You know, a couple of days from now, it's not going to taste the same as it does when it's really fresh like this. And it's one of those things I wouldn't freeze. It's better fresh. So, bon appetit.